You can't play a perfect Tetris game. It's impossible. I'm convinced it never will be done.
For decades, top Tetris players considered a perfect game to be an unattainable holy grail, until a player named Scuti Bozo became the first to do it. But what does a perfect game actually mean? Well, in the game there's 4 ways to score, by arranging the falling blocks to complete 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, or 4 lines at once. The 4-line clear is called a Tetris, and is worth by far the most points, and the score counter maxes out at 1 million points. So a perfect game has traditionally been defined as a game where you get 100% Tetrises until you max out the score. Simple enough, right? The problem is that the pieces are random. Even if you play flawlessly, it's not guaranteed that the pieces will form a perfect stack. But the biggest problem is that you need a line piece for each Tetris, and you never know how long it will be until you get it. On average, you'll get a line piece once every 7 pieces, but you could get 2 line pieces in a row, or have to wait 50 pieces between them. You just have no idea. So it's basically certain that at some point in the game, you'll encounter a line piece drought so long that you'll be forced to take a smaller line clear to survive. So how did Scuti Bozo get a perfect game? Well, he took advantage of a little secret about the game. Technically, the pieces aren't completely random. Now, the part of the game's program that's in charge of this, the random number generator, or RNG, has some math equations in its bag of tricks that do a pretty good job at scrambling the pieces and simulating randomness. The issue is that the equations are a deterministic system, which is a fancy way of saying every time you turn on the console, the RNG is going to simulate the exact same random piece sequence, because the starting points for the equations are going to be identical every time. Of course, the game's designers recognized this would be a serious issue.
When I played it, I said the pieces are not coming out random. The pieces have to be random. So their program came out on Saturday, and I worked with them and fixed their random number generator.
The clever solution the programmers came up with was to secretly tap into the one unpredictable part of the system, the player themselves. So instead of generating the piece sequence only when you need it during a game, here's what's actually happening. When you turn on the console, the RNG generates a predetermined number sequence that could be used as the starting point for generating a piece at a rate of 60 times a second, or once every frame of the game. This is going on even during the menu screens. It's only when you actually play a game and place down a piece that the RNG is alerted to stop where it's at, finish the full process for the bag of tricks, and give you your next piece. So basically, the player is always zipping through potential pieces and invisibly deciding their own fate with how long it takes them to place down their piece. It's a genius way to disguise the deterministic system and have the player generate their own randomness in a way that's basically impossible for them to have any control over in the moment. Except, of course, Scuti Bozo knew a way around this. While emulating the game on a computer, he used a tool-assisted speedrun program, or TAS, that allowed him to pause and rewind time in the game. That way, if he ever ran into a dead end on a perfect game where he didn't get the right piece, he could just rewind a little bit and try a different placement that took longer to fall until he got the piece he wanted. Over time, he slowly constructed a blueprint for a perfect game. Then it was just a matter of starting up his console, going through the menu screens with the exact right timing, and then placing down hundreds of pieces from memory in the exact right spot, eventually reaching the million-point barrier. NES Tetris is now finally a solved game, completed to perfection. Except, isn't using a TAS cheating? It feels like cheating. It's gotta be cheating, right? Well, Scuti Bozo is actually a prolific speedrunner across many old retro games, and in a lot of them it's quite normal to use TAS machines to figure out the fastest possible routes through a level. TASes often use a lot of tricks and glitches that are really difficult for humans to replicate, so it's a real challenge for top players to try and imitate the TAS. And that's why Scuti submitted his game for consideration as the official world record. However, in NES Tetris, imitating a TAS like Scuti's is much more straightforward, and trivializes the primary challenge, which is only being given a one-piece preview and dealing with whatever random pieces get thrown at you.
The pieces have to be random.
So the consensus among the Tetris community has been that while Scuti's game is a really impressive feat of memorization, it belongs in a different category from the official world record because it doesn't really fit the spirit of the game. Scuti did show that a perfect game was technically possible, but only through the godlike powers of foresight the TAS tools provided. So the big question is, can a mere mortal human ever do a perfect game someday with only a one-piece preview? As it turns out, the answer is yes. It's already happened. This video is not just about Scato's game, which was uploaded all the way back on July 5th, 2020. In the quest for the human limit of Tetris perfection, Scato is just the first chapter in the story. NES Tetris has had a rich competitive history since its release in 1989, from being the flagship game of the 1990 Nintendo World Championships to having its own dedicated World Championships annually since 2010. But across thousands of games, unsurprisingly, a perfect game has never come close to happening in competition.
I'm convinced it never will be done.
So for the longest time, a more realistic goal for top players has been a perfect transition. So what is that? Well, in NES Tetris, as you go up in levels, you get more points, but the speed gets faster. So you want to score as many Tetrises as possible before the game gets too hard. That's where the starting level comes in. For whatever level you start on, in this example, level 12, you get a bunch of bonus lines at the beginning to score as much as you can before you hit the transition, where the levels start moving up rapidly and the game gets a lot faster and more difficult. So the starting level is really important for your score. Here's the catch though. You can start on any level from 0 to 19, but while the points increase linearly, the speed does not. And pretty quickly, Pro Tetris players realized they're getting an incredible bargain if they start on level 18. Almost the same amount of points per Tetris as the highest possible amount on level 19, but at a much slower speed than level 19. So that's why every game in the World Championships nowadays starts on level 18, and a perfect transition would be 33 Tetrises in a row. But in the 15 years the World Championships have been happening, a perfect transition hasn't happened either. The person who came the closest was Fractal, who in the 2022 World Semifinals started a game with 27 Tetrises in a row.
Where's the long bar? Oh my goodness! 104 lights. Another Tetris for Fractal.
He's got to be careful. He can't push too hard on this after all. It is a scoring challenge.
Oh, there's a burn.
He can't do it. Yeah, stay safe, stay safe. It's all
And
good. It's all good.
Standing ovation for the Fractals. Amazing Tetris streak.
But in the post-game interview, Fractal revealed something unexpected.
Let's talk about the near perfect transition. We saw you look like you were having fun. Your fist pumping all over the place. Were you really getting into it that much?
Well, there's lore, you see. A little over a year ago, I was playing off camera and I got my first perfect transition, and I had like a screenshot of it and like nobody to prove it. So the next day I was like, okay, I'm gonna start grinding for this and I'm going to get it on camera and it shouldn't be that bad, and I still have not gotten it.
So yeah, it turns out that getting a perfect transition on camera had been Fractal's white whale for a while. When he first started grinding in April 2021 and keeping stats on his attempts, he calculated it would take him an estimated 7,000 attempts to get a perfect transition again. The nature of perfect grinds is that most games end pretty close to the start. Over 1 year later, in July 2022, in a game he uploaded under the YouTube title Worst Choke in NES Tetris History Probably, he got just 2 Tetrises away from a perfect transition, but then couldn't get the right pieces to fill the stack cleanly.
Ah! I think that's it. Wait. That is so sad!
Fractal had taken a triple into the transition, just 1 unit shy of perfection. If there's anything Fractal's known for though, it's his creativity and drive to never give up. In January 2024, nearly 2 years after his grind first began, he was early on in a game when he made a mistake and put a hole in his stack. Now normally this would mean the end of a perfect run, but Fractal figured out a way to build on top of it without ever taking a smaller line clear.
Okay, nice. Okay, we can do this. If this is the one, and I build with like a row of garbage for the entire run, or for like a majority of the run, that'd be...
Fractal again got all the way to being just 2 Tetrises away, and the pieces started to be troublesome again.
Okay, so fine. Come on. Just one. Yes! Screw you! This was so dumb! I built on row 2! for 80 lines. Holy
Fractal had finally captured his white whale. But this wasn't his final goal, not by a long shot. He updated his Twitch profile description to describe himself as an NES Tetris player with a million things to do. Just you wait. Along with an extremely ambitious list of goals for 2024, one of which was the perfect max out. Now, a perfect max out requires you to not only get a perfect transition of 33 Tetrises, but then to get 10 more Tetrises after that on level 19 and above. Fortunately, the levels past 19 don't get any faster by the time you reach the perfect max out on level 23. But the bad news is, those levels are still really fast. And while Fractal's goal was, of course, to be the first to do it, he also knew the odds were slim of anybody being able to get it at all, if it had taken him this long to get just 2 perfect transitions. So he encouraged others to join in, saying the more people who grind, the better the odds are for a success. And well, eventually another person joined in, by the name of Noah Dangler. Noah Dangler started playing NES Tetris quite recently in 2021, at a point where there were already multiple generations of legendary players. So nearly from the start, Dangler was looking for a niche he could carve out for himself in the scene, and he eventually found one.
And there it is, boom, Tetris for Dangler, the 83% Tetris rate with a 200,000 point lead over Sidnev.
Dangler is going for a perfect play.
Dangler's superpower was being freakishly good at adjustments, which means changing the position of your current piece mid-drop to accommodate the next piece.
We're seeing some insane amount of adjustments to this particular game.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wait that!
Those last second adjustments were pristine from Dangler.
Let's break that down in slow motion. Dangler saw the J piece was coming next, and while he could place it here, it'd be safer for him to build out the left side of his board, so he adjusts the S piece to accommodate it, but then sees a T piece is coming next, so he adjusts the J piece to be able to continue building out the left side of his board. All of these little moves add up to make a big difference over the course of a full game, and among all the major tournaments combined where statistics are tracked, Dangler has the highest lifetime percentage of points scored before the transition, getting 75.3% of a perfect score. And in casual play outside of competition, he could push things even further. On March 15th, 2024, while using a mod that allowed him to track points beyond a max out, he set a world record by becoming the first person to get 1.5 million points before the level 29 kill screen, an otherworldly 97% scoring efficiency.
After I got the 1.5 and a kill screen, Fractal DM'd me like, hey, congratulations. And he asked me like, what are you gonna do next? And I wasn't sure. It's like, you should go for a perfect max out. I was like, okay, that's probably a good idea. I guess I'll do that. Took a break of a couple days and I sort of thought about it, like, did I want to go for a perfect max out? And then Fractal booted up the stream of perfect attempts, and I was like, okay, well, I gotta go for it now.
Dangler went all in on chasing perfection for the next few weeks, and on April 9th, it looked like he would finally have a chance. He opened up a game with 32 straight Tetrises, and then got this J piece on a high board, which taking a double here would be the safe move in competition, but of course Dangler is going for perfection. So he adjusts the J piece and takes the gamble, and it pays off with his 33rd straight Tetris for a perfect transition into level 19. He's on the much faster speed now, but he seems locked in. Then disaster strikes. Dangler places a square on columns 7 and 8 right before his 40th Tetris in a row, and then places another square on top of it. He will now need an extra line piece to keep the perfect stack going. He cashes in the one Tetris he already has set up with a line piece, and then places a Z piece in columns 7 and 8. This isn't looking so good. He needs to set up 8 perfect rows to prep the final 2 Tetrises, but is now dependent on getting a line piece and T piece to fill out the right. But miraculously, it happens. He gets a line piece and T piece and then a perfect L piece to fill out the center. He only has 2 units left to finish the perfect 8 rows. He gets a J piece for the one on the right and then gets another J piece. Now the one benefit of setting up the final Tetris is it doesn't matter if the stack above is messy. All he needs to do is fill in the final unit and then wait for 2 line pieces. But in a moment of panic, probably because Dangler is so used to making perfect stacks, Dangler chooses a J move that makes no holes. And now he's out of space on his board, so he throws an L piece in the gap. He gets a line piece for the 42nd Tetris, but has no way to get the final one. Just like Fractal before him, 1 single unit shy of perfection. Just a few days later on April 13th, Noah would have a shot at redemption and get into the exact same position. 41 perfect Tetrises, just 2 more to go. But then he got a J piece and missed an adjustment for the square coming next, plugging the spot that would have been perfect for it. So then he was stuck trying to find a good spot for the square and saw an S piece coming next, so he made an adjustment for it, but at the same time set up a line piece dependency on the left. And now he was at the mercy of the RNG for an extra line piece. He did not get another line piece until it was too late, and he had covered the stack with holes. He had now come 1 Tetris short of a perfect max out twice. But he would get yet another shot at redemption that same day. Again, just 2 Tetrises from a perfect max out. He needs 8 complete rows, but then gets an S and Z piece with nowhere to go, so he piles them in the center and then gets an L piece. Now the run isn't over, there's still theoretical combinations of pieces he could get that would allow him to fill in the 8 rows. But he ends up dropping the L piece in the center and makes it impossible to fill the gap. For the 3rd time overall and the 2nd time that day, he finishes just 1 Tetris away.
I have no words at this point. I have no f***ing words at this point. I have literally no f***ing words.
3 days later, on April 16th, Dangler made it to another perfect transition. 10 Tetrises to go. But right away he runs into trouble. He gets 3 quick S pieces to force himself into another long bar dependency. He gets the Tetris, but before he can fill in the dependency, he's forced into a second long bar dependency. By the time he fills them in, he has to set up a 3rd long bar dependency and immediately gets it filled. Every gamble is paying off this time, but still, one mistake could make it all for nothing. His nerves are skyrocketing, but with every Tetris, he gets closer and closer. Finally, just 1 left to go. This time, he manages to set up the 4 rows needed for the final Tetris, but the long bar isn't coming. All he can do is wait as long as he possibly can.
Are you f***ing kidding me?
Let's f***ing go!
Noah Dangler becomes the first person to match Scotto's tasks and get a perfect max out.
Let's f***ing go!
So how did Fractal respond after Dangler beat him to the achievement? Well, him and Dangler are actually good friends and have done collab streams together in the past. Fractal left a comment on Dangler's game saying, "Take your break. You more than deserve it and can't wait to see what you do next. GG's, man." And Dangler responded, "Thanks, Fractal. I wouldn't have gotten this if it weren't for you." So, have humans finally perfected Tetris? Well, there technically is another way humans could improve. You may remember from the starting level chart that technically the highest possible level start is level 19, and technically you do get a little more points per Tetris than level 18. So theoretically, could you get an even faster perfect max out if you started on level 19? As it turns out, you can. But just barely. Instead of needing 43 Tetrises, you only need 42. But it's at the cost of having to get every Tetris on level 19 speed. So given how hard a perfect 18 max out was, it's difficult to even imagine how tough a perfect level 19 max out would be. At least, it was hard to imagine until another player gave it a shot. That's right, we're not even close to the end of the story. A few years prior, in August 2021, a player named Sidnev had gotten a game that completely shocked the scene. It began on a level 19 start and reached a max out with only 14 total lines burned outside of Tetrises. This game was so good, it actually broke the overall fastest max out world record at the time, which included level 18 starts. But it was a huge outlier, and the world record wouldn't be held by another 19 start for several years. What finally turned the tides again was when a new strategy called rolling became mainstream. Rolling used multiple fingers hitting the back of the controller to achieve much faster movement than older methods, allowing players to survive a lot better on level 19. And that was showcased when the world record finally returned to a level 19 start by a player named Meme in August 2023. Early on in Meme's game, she misdropped a line piece when going for a Tetris, and in the past this would have been an instant game over. But Meme was able to use rolling to just barely get the next line piece over and keep the run alive. Meme ended up getting a level 19 max out with just 7 burned lines, half of Sidnev's. And then after Dangler got his perfect 18 start max out, he set his sights on becoming the first to get a perfect 19 start max out too. In early December 2024, he started a game with 2 burned lines within the first 4 Tetrises, and then had only 1 burn for the entire rest of the game.
Oh my goodness. Holy
He had pushed the record down to just 3 burns. 2 weeks later, he got another game with just 3 burns. And then unbelievably, in a victory lap, got another 14 more perfect Tetrises after that. Dangler seemed like the heavy favorite in the race to perfection, and all the perfect game practice had been paying off in tournaments too. Dangler beat Sidnev in the top 8 of the 2024 World Championships, primarily through strong pace play.
Sidnev has been eliminated. Dangler with that crazy performance.
I was telling myself I really should beat Dangler, but I didn't because he was better. Yeah.
But as it turns out, Sidnev had also still been quietly grinding for the level 19 record and making steady improvement. And then she had an otherworldly run on March 28th, 2025. She began with 30 straight Tetrises, but then encountered a dire situation that I'll just let you watch. Yeah, that's the kind of play it takes to maintain a perfect run on level 19 speed. As Sidnev approached the finish line, she could feel the pressure of the moment and started breathing heavily. Right before she could set up for the final Tetris, Sidnev missed a T-spin and put a hole in the stack. But actually, all is not lost. The 41 Tetrises have put Sidnev just 400 points away from a max out. Even just a single might be enough. That single was enough to technically push Sidnev over the max out score, which here is shown to be over 1 million using the same mod as Dangler. While 41 Tetrises and a single isn't quite as aesthetically pleasing as all Tetrises, it is still the fastest possible max out using any line clears on a level 19 start. And so Sidnev triumphantly uploaded the game to YouTube under the title of Perfect Max Out. Pretty much. Humans had finally conquered level 19 and even surpassed Scotto's Task World record. Except, it's really unfortunate how 41 Tetrises gets you so close to a max out, right? If only the scoring system made it possible to get just a smidge more points beforehand, you could theoretically get a level 19 max out without even taking the single. And well, the first digit of Sidnev's score is actually a hint that, yep, there is a way to get a smidge more points beforehand. So in NES Tetris, whenever you push down on a piece to make it reach the bottom faster, you get 1 point per row you push down on. Now normally this is such a negligible amount of points that no one pays attention to it much, but Sidnev is actually famous for having the habit of always getting 1 pushdown point at the beginning of every game she plays, so that she wins if the scores in competition ever end in a tie. And that did lead to someone asking Sidnev in her level 19 max out comments section, can you do 400 points of pushdown and get 41 Tetrises in a row from the start? To which Sidnev replied, yes, that is possible. I will not be doing that though. But well, I'm sure you can guess it at this point. Someone has tried to do it. Sidnev's best year in the World Championships was 2023, when she made it all the way to the finals. But the player she beat in the semifinals that year by the name of Blue Scuti kinda stole the show. Scuti was a rookie in his first year at the tournament, so for him to make the top 4 was a complete surprise, and he quickly became a fan favorite. Later that year, Fractal was grinding for the separate achievement of crashing the game, and was widely expected to be the first to do it. But at the last moment, Scuti swooped in and nabbed the achievement himself.
Oh my god!
This ended up leading to worldwide press coverage where he was dubbed the first person to beat Tetris, and he became by far the most famous Tetris player in the scene.
A lot of people know me. I'm not just like a random kid walking around. It's a lot different, it's really weird.
The story got so large that a documentary crew reached out to film a movie about his journey to compete in the World Championships in 2024, since he was now considered a top contender to win it all. And then, in the top 8, this happened.
He can't do it!
And
it's not
by
gonna
60,000 points, Tristop eliminates Blue Scuti!
And Tristop has become the legend killer here in the top 8.
Scuti's best results, it seemed, came when there weren't sky-high expectations. Over the course of 2024, other players took on more of the spotlight, while Scuti attended some smaller tournaments, with a bit less press and media, where he could hang out more with his friends in the community. He even co-hosted a tournament in his local library, but everybody in the community still knew to never underestimate him when it came to Tetris. Sure enough, just 3 days after Sidnev uploaded her perfect level 19 max out, Scuti uploaded this. A level 19 start where he's going both for perfection and pushdown points. This is now up to ludicrous difficulty because not only must Scuti play flawlessly on the punishing speed, he also has to keep his stack low enough so that he can actually get 400 pushdown points. Sometimes he's only getting 1 or 2 extra points per piece, so he knows he needs to push down on at least several hundred pieces to be safe. 24 Tetrises in, he runs into serious trouble. He has a line piece dependency on the left, but opts to throw the line piece in the bottom center, maybe because he's still focused on maximizing pushdown points. Unfortunately, this causes his board to get super jagged, and to stabilize things he ends up putting a hole in his stack. Is his run cooked? No, you just gotta let him cook. 2 pieces later, instead of placing his L piece in the obvious spot on the left, he stands it vertically on the right and gets a perfect clean Tetris 2 rows off the bottom to keep the streak alive. Shortly afterwards, he stops pushing down and plays things a bit more safe. He just has to hope he's gotten enough bonus points. He makes it all the way to being 1 Tetris away. His next Tetris will be the moment of truth, where he finds out if he'll make history. Turns out he had nothing to worry about. He had almost 600 extra pushdown points to spare.
Yes! Oh my god. Oh, my leg hurts so bad.
This was the first max out with 41 perfect Tetrises in a row. The final step in getting the highest score in the fastest possible time with exactly the way the game was released in 1989. Now that Scuti had finished the journey for NES Tetris being perfected by humans, what could he possibly do next? Well, during one of his trips to a gaming convention for a Tetris event, Scuti found something really cool on display at a vintage computer exhibit. The very first prototype version of Tetris ever made on an authentic 1980s Soviet computer. So naturally, Scuti had to sit down and see how he could do. But when he started playing it, it turns out there's something really weird about how you score in this version of Tetris that was actually relevant to his own perfect game. And in order to understand the reason why, we need to go back into the mind of the game's original creator in 1985. Alexei Pajitnov was a young computer programmer in his 20s who worked at the Academy of Sciences in Moscow and dabbled in making computer games in his spare time. As dramatized here in the Tetris movie, Alexei was trying to think of new ideas for games when he was struck with inspiration looking at the children's game Pentaminos. The goal of Pentaminos is to use the different shaped blocks to perfectly fill up the board. So Alexei made a simple copy of the game electronically and called it Genetic Engineering. The problem was the game wasn't very interesting. There wasn't anything more to do once you found the solution for a perfect board. So Alexei decided to up the stakes. What if the pieces were random and fell from the sky instead? That would mean it'd be a challenge every time to fill up a perfect board. The game was a lot better, but it still didn't feel good enough. It ended too quickly. So as a way to extend the game, Alexei decided to have completed lines disappear. And now the first version of Tetris was complete. So what's the scoring system like? Well, here's the thing. You don't actually get get any points for scoring a Tetris. You don't get any points for the line clears at all. Instead, the primary way to score is just by pushdown points, calculated in a backwards way, where each piece starts out being worth 19 points and loses a point every row you don't push down. Which actually makes a lot of sense given how the prototype was all about how many pieces you could fit on the board and how quickly you could do it. The line clears were almost an afterthought. So while Tetris's original scoring system was technically carried over into the NES version, the very high scores from line clears made it basically an obsolete remnant. Who cares about a couple points here and there when you can earn over 20,000 from a Tetris? But in a way that the programmers could have never anticipated, the fastest possible max out would only be possible because of their inclusion of the pushdown points. It's kind of a crazy and beautiful coincidence that over 40 years later, Alexei's original legacy is still living on in the achievements of the new generation. So that big documentary about Blue Scuti is actually premiering next week in New York at a film festival from June 11th to June 13th. A lot of prominent people in the Tetris community will be there, so if you're in the area and want to go, I'll put a link to tickets in the description. And thank you to all the patrons who supported this video, with an extra special thanks to channel sponsors Scott Gray and Gilbert Tang, and everybody else who watches this channel who has been very patient during the 9-month gap I had in video uploads. I had some unexpected life stuff come up that required me to step away from YouTube, but the good news is it's all done now, and I cannot wait to get back into regular videos again. I know there's a topic a lot of people have been waiting for. Don't worry, it's coming. But the most pressing news is actually that the annual Classic Tetris World Championships are happening in just a few days. Unfortunately, I did not have time to make a preview video for this year, but the team over at the official Classic Tetris YouTube channel did something even better. This year, they've made a whole preview series with dedicated videos about all the top contenders to win. I'll have a link on screen if you want to check out the playlist, and see you in the next video.